Shit! It's time for another thrilling edition of Austin Archer's YouTube exclusive content.
YouTube exclusive content.
All right, yeah. I dressed up kind of fancy for this one. Are you feeling it? Is it working? Are you feeling kind of horned up? It's okay if you're not, but also, and I can't stress this enough, it's okay if you are. Today I'm going to talk about soulmates and how I think we're starting to culturally untether ourselves from stories that solidify soulmates as a cultural concept and belief, and tell new stories about how maybe a soulmate isn't really the most realistic or useful concept. You like that? Like that intro? Right into it. No fuss, no muss, no fooling around. Not going to dance around the issue here like some of these other goofball content creators. Starting the video with some vague esoteric commentary on an obscure 15th century poem, all the while leaving you, the audience, wondering, where's he going with this? The thumbnail said the video was going to be about what jelly beans tell us about the inescapable truth of our own mortality, and I honestly don't know how he's going to get back around to that. No, we're not doing that. Not today. Soulmates. The video is about soulmates. And I'm going to be analyzing a handful of movies to do this. Most of these films came out years ago and are available to stream or rent, but one of them is currently still in theaters, at least at the time that I'm writing this video. I'm going to be getting into some plot details for several of these films, so just generally know that any movie that comes up, I'm likely going to be dropping some spoilers, so be advised. This is a general, overall spoiler warning for the whole video. I could be spoiling plots at any given moment, so gird your loins and be prepared. The movie I'm going to talk about that's currently in theaters at the time of filming this video is Celine Song's absolutely exquisite debut feature, Past Lives. I'll be talking about this film last, so if you haven't seen it yet, you could potentially watch the whole video and then wait to watch the last part until after you've seen Past Lives. And trust me, you absolutely should go see Past Lives. If you haven't seen Past Lives, maybe just, I don't know, like turn this video off right now, turn your phone off, turn your computer off, turn the internet off, turn everything off, and go watch Past Lives right now. I'm serious. Go watch Past Lives. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. I actually hope that someone is watching this like a year or two in the future, and Celine Song has already won Oscars for Best Original Screenplay, Best Director, and Best Picture, and you can know, future person, that I have the goat taste, that my taste is indeed goated with the sauce, that I told y'all in August of 2023 that Past Lives was the movie to beat, and that I was right. Of course, if I wind up being wrong and the movie doesn't even get nominated, then I'm still right, and it's the Academy that has failed. Either way, I'm right about how good this movie is, so suck it. Chapter 1. The Legend of the Soulmate. My whole life, movies have been telling me that I need to be on the lookout for my soulmate, whether it's through a device as overt and on the nose as the true love's kiss, or through something less explicit but still basically just as direct. It's that tried and true formula that so many modern rom-coms follow. Two people are meant to be together. Maybe they dated once years before, but the timing was off. Maybe they're meeting each other for the first time as the movie begins, but either way, the movie wants us to know pretty early on that these two people are supposed to be together. But there's usually an obstacle, and oftentimes that obstacle is that one of them, or sometimes both of them, is seeing someone else, someone they aren't meant to be with, someone who might be lovely, maybe a total catch, but they're just not it. They're not the one. They're not that person's soulmate. And the story dances on the edge of the possibility of this non-soulmate union happening. It's the central conflict. It's what gives the movie tension and stakes. The idea that one of the main characters could potentially wind up with the wrong person. A person who they could maybe have a perfectly satisfactory life with, but who ultimately just won't do. Won't fulfill them entirely, won't give them the most vibrant and vital form of happiness they could possibly have. And so usually by the end of the movie, our two main characters who are meant for each other wind up together because the story wants us to know that anything less than this outcome simply isn't okay. We simply cannot afford to spend our lives settling for anything less than the best possible ending. Cannot afford to spend our lives with anyone less than the best possible person. We have a soulmate, and it is our life's duty to find that person or die trying. I want to talk in this video about this tried and true rom-com formula, and to do that, I thought I'd take a closer look at the film that arguably created it. The film that could be considered to be the original modern rom-com. The film that could be said to have set the template for all other rom-coms that would come after. I'm talking, of course, about the 1989 classic from writer Nora Ephron and director Rob Reiner, When Harry Met Sally. Believe it or not, I had never seen When Harry Met Sally when I got the idea to make this video. I knew that if I wanted to focus on a single film to explore rom-com structure, there was probably no more quintessential example than this one, so I would have to watch it. And let me tell you, dear viewer, I thought I knew what I was getting into. I thought I more or less knew the beats of what this movie was going to be without needing to see it. I mean, I'd of course heard certain quotes from the movie throughout the years and was certainly aware of the famous diner scene.
Yes! Oh! Yes! 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 Oh.
I'll have what she's having.
But I'd never actually seen it, so I went and I seen it. The film opens with an instrumental version of the classic love song, It Had to Be You. So right off the bat, this film is musically prepping me for a story about two people who were meant for each other. Then we see this very documentary-style interview with an older couple telling the story of how they met in a grounded, realistic way. This becomes a framing device used throughout the film. Older couples who feel like real people telling their real-life stories of how 30, 40, or 50 years ago they met and they knew then and there that they had found their one and only, the love of their life, the person they were always destined to meet, their soulmate. When viewed in the abstract, the plot of When Harry Met Sally has all the rom-com elements I mentioned earlier. I mean, of course it does, right? Harry and Sally are introduced to us as two people who feel fated to be together but keep meeting at the wrong time, or when one or both of them is unavailable and seeing someone else, but eventually, inevitably, they wind up together because that is the only acceptable option. It couldn't have been any other way. Like the song says, it simply had to be them. But watching the film, I slowly realized that many of my assumptions about what it was going to say about the concept of soulmates were just wrong. When Harry Met Sally isn't actually a narrative that exists to propagate the truth of the soulmate at all. Quite the contrary, Nora Ephron's excellent script exists to subvert that narrative. It dispenses with the magical thinking inherent in a story about love that is written in the stars and opts instead to offer something more real, more human, and more practical. The older couples we keep seeing throughout the film in the documentary-style vignettes keep telling us stories about how they instantly recognized each other as the one the moment they met. But this isn't true for Harry and Sally. When Harry actually meets Sally, there is no fantastical recognition of his soul's counterpoint in another. There isn't even the briefest acknowledgement from either character that there might be something special about the other. Harry is physically attracted to Sally and makes a sleazy pass at her even though he's dating her friend, and an understandably put-off Sally roundly rejects him. And that's it. The next time Harry and Sally meet, years later, Harry is still an immature playboy douchebag who tries and fails once again to get in Sally's pants. Harry's a pretty unlikable character for the first half of this film, honestly, and Sally doesn't even seem a little bit charmed by his antics. She seems annoyed by him, and rightly so. It isn't until years later, when Harry is finally humbled and softened by his wife Helen leaving him for another man, that he even becomes open to the idea of getting to know Sally as a person and developing a sincere friendship with her. And it is sincere. Harry genuinely enjoys his platonic, entirely non-romantic relationship with his new friend Sally. He isn't pretending to be her friend to trick her into sleeping with him, or biding his time until she wisens up and realizes that they're meant to be together. As far as Harry is concerned, the love of his life is living with another man. The love of his life was his ex-wife Helen. Harry is genuinely devastated by the loss of Helen and completely disillusioned with the idea of love as a result. Helen was, after all, the woman who was able to convince him to leave behind his playboy lifestyle and commit to marriage. The ultimate realization that Helen does not love him the same way he loves her causes genuine existential torment for Harry. It forces him into a horrifying realization that the fairy tale love he was taught to believe in his whole life might be a lie, and that even if the love that he and Helen had was real at some point, that's still no guarantee that a love like that will last. Sally is an interesting character because she never seems to buy into the idea of the all-powerful one and only soulmate. For Sally, it always seems like romantic partnership is more a matter of pragmatism and smart choices. We see this in the way that she tried to set up her perfect situation with Joe by making careful, intentional decisions. She and Joe decided not to marry because married people always wind up divorced. They decided not to have kids because they wanted the freedom to travel the world and have sex whenever they wanted. She felt like she had organized her life in the perfect, foolproof way, but her relationship with Joe is ultimately foiled by its lack of something Sally can't quite define.
We were in the cab playing I Spy. I spy a mailbox, I spy a lamppost. And she looked out the window and she saw this man and this woman with these two little kids, and the man had one of the little kids on his shoulders. And she said, "I spy a family." And I started to cry.
All this leads us inevitably to the conclusion of Harry realizing he wants to be with Sally and, in true rom-com fashion, running through the streets of New York City to find her at a New Year's Eve party so that he can profess his love to her, give her a big old midnight smoocheroo, and they can live happily ever after. Again, in the abstract, this all feels pretty straightforward and in lockstep with the rom-com formula, but I would argue that what's happening during the climax of this movie isn't Harry and Sally realizing that they are soulmates who were always meant to be together. I think what's actually happening here is Harry and Sally are realizing that right now they are in love and they want to be together. And they don't want to be together because they are being pulled together by the inescapable magnetism of some mysterious cosmic force like destiny. No, they want to be together because they just want to. It makes sense. They've spent years very intentionally cultivating a deep, meaningful bond with each other. They have invested significant time in understanding one another in an intimate, personal way. And this isn't to say that the moment is completely devoid of any magic. There's always some kind of mystical alchemy involved in what makes two people fall in love, but I don't think the movie is telling us that these two people are the only two people in the world for each other, and that's why they're winding up together. I think it's just telling us a story about how these two people found each other, built a sincere, mature friendship, and then slowly fell in love over the course of several years and consciously decided to start a life together. The reason I think this is so fascinating is that if this is the movie that supposedly built the blueprint for the modern American rom-com, then it seems like the vast majority of the films that came after it missed one of the most interesting and narratively challenging elements of the film. They seemingly followed the template in the abstract, hitting all the necessary bullet points, but many of these films don't aim to say anything subversive about what romantic love is and how it works. They prefer to keep it simple and sweet and pretty surface level. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy a reasonably simplistic fairy tale look at love as much as anybody else. I don't have a problem with a feel-good romantic story about two soulmates overcoming obstacles to achieve their destined union. I just think that When Harry Met Sally is a classic specifically because it offers us something more substantive to chew on. Something more practical and reflective of the real world. Chapter 2, The Real World. Now, it might make sense in a section called The Real World for me to leave behind the realm of movies and narrative fiction and to do an analysis on a real-life love story. But I'm not going to do that because I don't want to. I'm just going to talk about some more movies that I like. If you ask most people what the greatest movie trilogy of all time is, there are a handful of well-known properties that you're likely to hear mentioned. The Godfather, Back to the Future, the original Star Wars trilogy, or Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, maybe, to name a few. But I think one of the greatest and most underrated trilogies in the history of cinema is actually Richard Linklater's brilliant and beautiful Before trilogy. A trio of simple, understated films that tell the story of Jesse and Celine, an American man and a French woman who meet by chance on a European train one fateful day in their 20s and wind up embarking on a decades-long love affair. Perhaps the most ingenious and defining aspect of this trilogy is that each installment was made and released roughly a decade apart. There are a few things that make this choice from Linklater so effective. One is how it casts time as a very real main character in the films. And he does this in a way that doesn't simply feel like movie magic, but feels more like, well, reality. It's not uncommon for films to show characters at various different stages of life. When Harry Met Sally, for instance, starts with Harry and Sally just after college and ends with them in their mid-30s. But Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal didn't actually film the movie over the course of 14 years so that they could age with their characters. They just did what most movies do. They changed their hairstyles and made cosmetic shifts in their appearance and performance to create the illusion of growth and change over time. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a film asking the audience to suspend their disbelief and accept that a character is now 10 or 20 or 30 years older, even though the actor playing the character hasn't actually aged. But what's so cool about the method Linklater uses in the Before trilogy is his actors don't wind up really needing to do anything at all to sell the passage of time to the audience. As soon as the second film in the series, Before Sunset, begins, we can see that time indeed really has passed. And the fact that the time passage is real and not just the product of movie magic does something meaningful and hard to articulate. It adds something to the story that so many movies don't have. A sort of meta-narrative where we're watching a film that's as much about these two actors growing and changing as it is about the two characters growing and changing. We're not just watching Jesse and Celine get older and more mature. We're quite literally watching Ethan and Julie and even an unseen Richard Linklater getting older and changing in subtle but significant ways. Linklater used this same methodology in his groundbreaking film Boyhood to great effect, but that's a conversation for a different video. The other thing that this method of separating each film in the series by a 10-year time gap accomplishes is an expert-level subversion of the audience's understanding of the story and what they think it's trying to say about love and destiny and soulmates. When audiences saw the first film in the series, Before Sunrise, in 1995, they had no way of knowing that they were watching the first film in what would become a series of films spanning 20 years. It wasn't a big studio blockbuster after all. It was just a small obscure indie flick about a fly-by-night romance in a beautiful European city. So most people who saw Before Sunrise anytime between 1995 and 2003 most likely thought that they had watched a one-off film about two people who have a chance encounter that leads to a singular lovely night. The film seems like it's playing with themes of destiny and fate. Jesse and Celine are so taken with each other so instantly. It feels like a classic example of two soulmates finding and recognizing each other. But the ending undercuts those themes in a pretty radical and deliberate way. The film doesn't end with Jesse and Celine getting together. It ends with them deciding to go their separate ways, back to their separate lives and obligations. They do make this sort of naively idealistic plan to meet back up in the same spot 6 months later, but that's it. And we don't even get to see a flash forward to see whether or not they do indeed go through with their plan. The movie just fucking ends. I bet a lot of people were genuinely confused by this ending when it was the only film in the series for 9 years. It probably felt like they were being robbed of something they felt the film had promised them. Jesse and Celine seemed so good for each other, so young and charismatic and sexy and sure of the connection they were making. How could the film not have them wind up together? How could the credits roll without Jesse making some grand gesture and asking Celine to risk it all on the chance that they are meant for one another? How could Linklater have so badly whiffed on such an obvious ending? Well, that's where movie 2 comes in. It's 9 years later. Jesse is a published author. He lives in New York City where he's married and has a 4-year-old son. He's written a book about his fly-by-night romance with Celine, and he's doing a book signing in Paris. Celine shows up to see him for the first time since their romantic encounter years earlier, and they have another magical day in another beautiful European city, only this time they stay together at the end of the film. Jesse is supposed to get on a plane and go home to his wife and child, but he opts instead to stay with Celine, the woman who captured his heart all those years ago, the woman he felt he should have been with all along.
Baby, you are gonna miss that plane.
I know.
And just like that, Linklater has restored balance to the universe. All is as it should be. The audience has been vindicated. Our feeling that Jesse and Celine were robbed of their happy ending in movie 1 has been acknowledged by the filmmaker and honored. Love is written in the stars, and Jesse and Celine have finally accepted that they are indeed soulmates who are meant to be together. And that, in a nutshell, was the story of Jesse and Celine. For about 9 years. And then movie 3 came out. 2013's Before Midnight is the film that I think really establishes the Before trilogy as maybe the most complete film trilogy of all time. A trilogy where there truly are no weak links, where none of the films are worse than the others in any meaningful way, and each individual film actually serves to make the others stronger. Each film in this trilogy works on its own as a solid standalone story, but together they tell one big, beautiful, achingly human story that can't be fully understood until you've seen all three. In Before Midnight, we catch up once again almost a decade down the road with our two fated soulmates, only now they're not just two people spending a magical romantic day in a lovely European city while flirting and falling in love. Now they're two people who have been together nearly every day for almost a decade, and they are parents to two young twin daughters. In many ways, this is the hardest film in the trilogy to watch. It's the most heartbreaking and the least hopeful. The first two films feel like they have so much optimism. They're so brimming with possibility. The characters are still young and eager to take risks and to live lives that feel exciting and bold and authentic, but by the time we get to Before Midnight, the spell cast by their love story has long since worn off, and now they're just two people trying to survive a shared life together. The film begins with Jesse dropping his son Henry off at the airport and sending him back to America. Jesse's son is a teenager now, and he spends his summers in Paris with Jesse and Celine, while living most of the year in Chicago with his mom, Jesse's ex. Jesse's desire to be more present in Henry's life is a sore spot in Jesse and Celine's relationship, and we see this early on in the film. He wishes he could be closer to Henry, but in order to do so, he and Celine and their 2 daughters would have to move to Chicago, and that's not something Celine wants to do. And she feels like this causes Jesse to quietly resent her, and the idea that he might be resenting her simply for not uprooting her entire life and the life of her 2 daughters in service of his emotional needs causes her to resent him. It's honestly a very relatable conflict. Neither one of them is really doing anything wrong. They're just 2 individual people having 2 individual emotional experiences that are both rooted in valid truths, and they're trying to navigate their individual experiences while co-parenting twin daughters. It's maybe not the future that we in the audience had hoped for Jesse and Celine to have at the end of the second film, but it is the right place for us to find them at this stage in the story. It's the place the story always had to go if it was ever going to say anything meaningful and substantive about the reality of long-term romantic partnership. Jesse and Celine love their daughters. They love their friends. They have a full and beautiful life together. But the reality of the story of their relationship, the story of them, is it's having a really hard time competing with the exciting and thrilling way it all began. When Harry Met Sally says a lot of subversive things about romantic love and how it can be just as much the practical, predictable result of spending years of intentional time getting to know someone as it can be about destiny or cosmic magic or whatever. Harry and Sally make a very intentional, definitive choice at the end of their film. They choose to be with each other because they know they've already invested so much time getting to know each other and building a really solid, intimate foundation. Their story shows that real love is about choices. It's about 2 people choosing to be together day after day, week after week, year after year. In the same way, Jesse and Celine's story is also about choice. Their seemingly fated meeting makes for a great love story on paper, yes, but at the end of the first movie, they have to decide if they're going to continue trying to live in the heightened ecstasy of this chance encounter, or if they're going to return to reality, and they choose reality. Then we get to movie 2, where after trying to live in reality for about 10 years, they realize they never really forgot about each other, and they never really found anything that had quite the same level of excitement as that one special night they spent together in their 20s in Vienna. So they come back together, and this time they choose to go all in. They're making a bet on destiny. They're choosing to say that it wasn't an accident that they met on that train all those years ago, that they were obviously meant for each other. And this is why I say that movie 3 is probably the best in the trilogy and the hardest to watch, because now it's no longer a hypothetical. The possibility of these 2 young, attractive strangers potentially getting together is no longer just some fanciful possibility. It's no longer a story about 2 people falling in love. It's no longer built on the tension of will they or won't they. It's now just a story about 2 people who live together, who clean up after each other, who take turns picking their kids up from school. And it's not that their relationship isn't good. It's not that they turned out to be super toxic for each other or awful together once the high of their hot romantic start wore off. It's just that after nearly 10 years of committed partnership, they find themselves where many real-life couples eventually find themselves. They're just kind of bored and confused. They've heard every one of each other's jokes and stories. They've met all of each other's friends and family members. They've watched all of each other's favorite movies, listened to all of each other's favorite records, eaten at all of their favorite restaurants, and visited all of their favorite places. And in all of that time, nothing has ever really quite matched the electric excitement of those first two encounters, or really, let's be honest, just that first one. And so what does this mean for our two main characters? What does this mean for us in the audience? Are Richard Linklater, Julie Delpy, and Ethan Hawke telling us that romantic storybook love is just a lie? An illusion? A sort of fairy tale we tell ourselves to make the elaborate torment of existence more bearable? Were they just fucking with us in the first two movies? Making us fall in love with the story of Jesse and Celine only to reveal it was all a big goof in the final act? Well, not entirely, but also kinda, yeah. And this is why I love these films so much, because after 20 years of chasing the storybook narrative, after 20 years of trying to establish evidence for the validity of soulmates as a concept, Jesse and Celine, and we in the audience along with them, ultimately have to just grow up. We have to realize that this is their life together, for better or worse, that this is what long-term partnership looks like for them, that this is what lifelong romantic love looks like for them. It's messy and hard and boring and forces you to make tough choices. And at the end of the film, Jesse more or less lays this all out for Celine.
I'm trying to make you laugh.
Okay.
I put up with plenty of your shit. And if you think I'm just some dog who's gonna keep coming back, then you're wrong. But if you want true love, then this is it. This is real life. It's not perfect, but it's real. And if you can't see it, then you're blind. All right, I give up.
Hey, it's the Austin who's editing this video right now, and this video is already going to be so long. I know, it's already going to be the longest video that I've made, but I just realized that I don't spend any time in this section talking about how good Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy are in these films. And it's like, obviously, I think that they're good. I wouldn't think that this was one of the greatest film trilogies of all time if I thought that the two main people in the movies were doing subpar work. But I don't know. It's a little bit of a non sequitur. It's not really on topic with the soulmates thing. But I just want to take a second just to talk about how fucking good they both are at acting, because I'm also an actor and I want to appreciate their work. That they weren't nominated for any of these films for any awards at any award shows, and like I said earlier, you're watching these movies that are about these characters growing, yes, but you're also watching Ethan and Julie grow as artists, and they're both very good in the first film, but they keep just getting better and better with each film, and it's so inspiring to watch these artists grow and continue to deepen their understanding of their craft and to continue to become more three-dimensional, more fully realized human beings. It's so obvious that both of them have so much more experience in life by the third film, and it makes them better artists. It makes them better storytellers and better actors. Their characters by the third film are both so much more fully developed. They're so much more flawed in all these really juicy, interesting ways. This look on Julie's face right here, when Ethan's saying all this kind of really hard, vitriolic, shitty stuff to her, oh my God. If you've ever been in a relationship that lasted longer than 2 years, there's a good chance that you've seen this look on your partner's face. It's that look when you say something that's pretty out of pocket. You're in the middle of a fight and you go somewhere that is kind of not cool for you to go, but maybe there's a nugget of truth in what you're saying, and maybe your partner recognizes that nugget of truth, but they're still I really don't like that you know me well enough to hurt me like that. I really don't like being hurt like that by anyone, and I especially don't like being hurt like that by you. I don't like that I'm living my life with a person who is capable and willing to cut me like that with their words, even if there's truth in those words. That look, reactions like that from Julie, she does it like throughout the entire third movie, and they're always so spot on and so like wonderfully painful. And Julie Delpy, Ethan Hawke, so good, such good actors. Okay, back to the video. The truth we all have to come to terms with is that Jesse and Celine are not actually soulmates destined to be together. They're just two people who met on a train one day and really liked each other and had this really cool evening together and made a decision several years later to give a relationship a shot based on nothing more than how well that one night went. There is no grand cosmic force dictating that they have to be together. They can break up or not break up. They just have to decide whether or not a life together is something they still want. And that's something they'll likely have to keep deciding many more times before their lives are through. Chapter 3, In Another Life. Everybody hanging in there so far? Doing all right? I figure if you're still here at this point, you're more or less all right with this. I know this video doesn't have me dunking on any conservatives or anything like that, but I hope it's cool if I make videos like this from time to time as well. I'd like to. I really enjoy analyzing stories and writing about things that aren't simply related to the mind-numbing culture war that will eventually kill us all, so let's talk about past lives! Again, gonna be spoiling stuff. Also, again, if you haven't yet, go see Past Lives. See it in the theater if at all possible, or rent it at home. If not, give it your time, give it your attention. If you can, be a good little capitalist and vote with your wallet by giving it your money. Okay, so Past Lives is this really good movie I like a lot. Hae-sung and Na-young are two childhood friends who grew up competing in school and flirting with each other in the same neighborhood in South Korea. At the age of 12, Na-young's family immigrates to Canada, meaning that all hope of this childhood crush becoming something more essentially goes out the window. Na-young adopts the English name Nora and eventually immigrates from Canada to New York City to pursue a career as a playwright. While living there, she reconnects with Hae-sung at the age of 24 over Facebook. They start Skyping with each other daily and reigniting their old flame, but after a few months of this, Nora realizes that there is no realistic future with Hae-sung and that she needs to focus on her life and goals in New York, so she cuts things off with him. Shortly thereafter, she goes on an artist retreat to Montauk where she meets a cute little Jewish guy named Arthur Zadaransky. He's also an aspiring writer, but he writes novels, not plays. Nora and Arthur fall in love. It's really sweet and cute. Flash forward to 12 years later. Hae-sung has tracked Nora down again and informed her that he will be visiting New York City and would like to see her while he's in town. Nora, who has been married to Arthur for about 10 years at this point, wants to see her old childhood friend and her crush, but understandably feels some type of way about it. And that's essentially the premise and plot of the movie. And what I love about this movie is, if this were just another dime a dozen Hollywood romance flick, it would probably be about how Nora comes to reconnect with her childhood love, the man she was always meant to be with, her actual one true soulmate. And Arthur would have to understandably step aside, recognizing that he is no match for the forces of destiny and true love, and allow his wife to claim her happily ever after fairy tale storybook ending with another man. A good comp that comes to mind that's a little more Hollywood stereotypical is The Notebook, where Rachel McAdams has a hot, exciting romance with babyface Ryan Gosling in her younger years. That romance ends, and later she marries James Marsden, who's a really great guy, who is also hot and treats her really well. But then later on, her one true love, Ryan Gosling, comes back into the picture, but this time he's even hotter, and he has a real sexy beard. And even though James Marsden is a really hot, really great guy, he's no match for her soulmate, so he has to step aside and let bearded Ryan Gosling just absolutely ravage her with the best sex of her life in this house that he built for her. Anyway, past lives could have gone down that road. In fact, there's a wonderful little scene where Arthur basically just talks about how if they were in a movie, he would be the obvious loser because Nora's story with Haesung is just so much more romantic and exciting. But commendably, Past Lives doesn't go down that road. If it did, I probably wouldn't be talking about it in this video, now would I? So, to just go ahead and ruin the end of the film, Nora doesn't wind up leaving her husband in some stereotypical Hollywood ending where she runs through an airport to stop Haesung just as he's about to board a plane back to Korea, telling him that she's never stopped loving him and that they are meant to be together. She acknowledges how important Haesung is to her and how complicated her feelings for him are and how he represents this whole other life that she had before she met Arthur, and this whole other aspect of her identity that exists outside of her life with Arthur, and this whole other possibility of what her life could have been had circumstances been just a little different. But ultimately, she does the pragmatic, realistic thing and opts to stay in the life she's been building with Arthur for the last decade plus because of course she does. It would be kind of insane for her to do anything else. I love what Past Lives has to say about the concepts of soulmates and destiny and true love. More specifically, I love what it has to say about the stories we tell ourselves about these things. When Nora first meets Arthur at the retreat in Montauk, she introduces him to the Korean concept of inyeon. The idea that everyone you meet is someone you knew in a past life, and that the deeper your bond and connection is with them in your current life, the deeper your bond most likely was with them in some past form. Now, Celine Song did not write a screenplay that's interested in getting into whether or not inyeon is a literal force that is actually at play in the universe. That's not really the point of her movie. She doesn't seem to really care whether we, the audience, actually believe in reincarnation or destiny as some kind of mystical reality. When Nora first introduces Arthur to the concept of inyeon, she tells him that it's not actually something she thinks is literally real. It's just something Korean people say to get in someone's pants. Which is, of course, her cheeky way of letting Arthur know that she's trying to fuck. So for Arthur and Nora, the concept or cultural story of inyeon starts off as a way for them to flirt and express interest in getting to know one another more intimately. But later, Haesung and Nora use the cultural story of inyeon as a way of coping with a situation that feels fundamentally unfair on some kind of cosmic level. There's this breathtakingly beautiful moment near the end of the film where Haesung and Nora look at each other as full-grown adults in their 30s, and they know that they are most likely never going to get to be together in any significant way in this current iteration of life. That's just not how this particular story is going to shake out for them. And you know, it's fine. They'll both be fine, and they both recognize the practicality in doing what they're doing, but it's also kind of devastating. There's definitely a part of Nora that wishes she could split her soul in two and live one full life in Korea with Haesung and one full life in New York with Arthur. Hell, there's probably a part of her that wishes she could experience a lifetime as a single person and see what that's like. There's probably a part of her that always wondered what it would be like to live in Iceland or Thailand or Portugal or some other place. But as far as she is aware, she only gets this one life, and she has to make a choice about how she's going to spend it. And so in this moment, Haesung uses the story of inyeon as a way to make that choice not hurt as much. He offers a comforting story about how maybe they got to be together in a past life, or maybe they'll meet back up in a future one. And this is meant to make the pain of their current reality sting a little less. And that's the thing about love in the real world. Like, I'm realizing as I'm writing this that that's the whole reason I think I wanted to make this video. Who you love and how long you choose to be with them always comes with a trade-off. There is always some form of sacrifice involved. If you are lucky enough to find a person that feels like a soulmate to you, someone who makes you feel complete, who makes your life feel more full and vibrant, who you can't imagine your life without, that's really awesome. And you're incredibly lucky to have found that. But there still is a definite trade-off there. By choosing to spend your life in a long-term monogamous partnership with one person, you are simultaneously choosing to close yourself off from any deep, intimate, romantic relationships you could potentially form with all other persons. And there's nothing really wrong with that. It's a choice a lot of people make, and it's a perfectly reasonable choice to make. It's just, that's it. That's your choice. It's kind of like if you were in a cosmic game of Deal or No Deal, and you picked a briefcase that had a really solid relationship in it with above average communication and pretty decent sex, and you chose to just stick with the briefcase you picked. Well, you and the other person choose together, because on this version of the game, sometimes you have to make the choice with another person, and sometimes you make the choice by yourself. Like, in order for you to keep the relationship briefcase, both people need to agree to take the deal, and they need to keep agreeing to the deal over and over again for the rest of their lives. But the agreement to take the deal could potentially be broken if just one of them ever decides they want to open more briefcases. And I think I'm really getting lost in the weeds on the rules of how this particular version of Deal or No Deal works, and I don't think that's the point. The point is, you and this other person are making a choice. Not a bad choice at all, and not a choice anyone would fault you for making, but you are choosing to not find out what's in any of the other briefcases. And in this version of the show, it could be anything. It could be $1 million or $20 million or a jetpack or a villa in Spain or your dream job or twins. Part 4, making it personal. So I changed my clothes for this part, obviously, and the lighting a little bit. It just felt right, I think, because I think things might get a little bit real in this part. So just be cool. Everybody be cool. So why did I want to do this, right? Why did I spend the last 2 weeks writing and rewriting this script? Am I just working out my personal issues with romantic love and long-term partnership and forcing all of you to be a part of it on the off chance that it resonates and offers you something of value? Yeah, pretty much. Yes. My personal journey with love is one marked by chapters. Mine is a story of serial monogamy. I've spent different periods of my life with many different partners for varying lengths of time, and I don't really begrudge my story. The people I've been lucky enough to be intimately partnered with have all been different in beautiful and pronounced ways. They all challenged me in different ways and taught me different things about myself. I had a different dynamic with each of them, a different sense of humor that was just ours, different inside jokes, different shared secrets. They each laughed differently, smelled differently, kissed differently, thought differently. They each believed slightly different things. They each had slightly different dreams. I'm deeply grateful for every single one of them that I've been lucky enough to spend some amount of time with in this iteration of my life, which as far as I can tell, in any meaningful way, is the only iteration of life I'll ever get to experience. So I feel incredibly lucky to have had such a full and varied experience of romantic love with all of these amazing people at different stages of my life. I feel that getting to experience as much variety as I have gotten to experience has really helped to make me a more fully self-actualized person. Or at the very least, it's maybe made me less boring. But of course, it comes with a trade-off. At the time of making this video, I'm a 35-year-old single man who lives alone and who has never been married or had any children. I may well never marry or have children. I may well never know what it's like to spend 10 or 15 or 20 or 50 years with the same person, to have that kind of continuity with someone, that kind of comforting consistency. And I'm not saying any of this to elicit sympathy. I'm just stating it as a matter of simple fact, just as Nora had to recognize the simple fact of her life, that she was married to Arthur and not Haesung, that she lived in New York and not Korea. I have to recognize the simple facts of my life. The people I was lucky enough to be romantically involved with at one time or another have all long since moved on to new parts of their stories that largely no longer have anything to do with me. At some point in our shared past, we all chose to gamble with the perfectly fine briefcase we'd been offered and see what else life might have in store for us. And I want to be really clear here. I don't mind being a single adult. In fact, I kind of like it a lot. I like it a lot. It's going great. I mean, sometimes it's less great than other times, but it's mostly just pretty great. I have married friends who have either lived with roommates or been married their entire adult lives, and they've never experienced what it's like to live on their own, to just have a place that is just theirs, where they make all the decorating decisions, where everything in the space belongs to them. I mean, this is the first time in my life that I've ever lived completely alone, and it's kind of rad. And I'm definitely not saying that it's better than being coupled up. I'm just saying it's not worse. Neither thing is better or worse than the other. They're just different experiences that are both normal to have. But we push the concept of long-term committed monogamy so much in so many of our stories. We try to sell it as the goal that every single person should be trying to achieve. And we push this idea to the point that anything that isn't long-term committed monogamy starts to feel like failure. And I just... What I'm saying with this video is, it's not. It's just not. The thing about long-term committed monogamy is that for most people, it's not a very realistic goal. Most people who try it will wind up breaking up at some point, and there are still many others who won't break up, but probably should. And I'm not shitting on long-term monogamy either. That's not the point of the video. If a long-term monogamous commitment is working for you and your partner, then dope. But if your experience is a polyamorous one, or if you're having an experience that's a series of different chapters with different people at different times, or if you're just doing it solo dolo style, all of that is equally fine. It's all just circumstance and choices. It's not about destiny or soulmates or what's meant to be or not meant to be. It's just about time and how you choose to spend it and who you choose to spend it with or not spend it with. I kind of think as a species we need to retire the idea that there is one true way we are meant to experience romantic love and embrace the reality that there are, in fact, infinite ways we can potentially experience it, an infinite amount of briefcases we could potentially open. But there are a finite amount of ways we will wind up experiencing it. There are a finite amount of briefcases we will open before the game inevitably ends. And what I think we should really be focusing on is trying to simply enjoy the result of whatever choices we wind up making. Because it's not going to be perfect. Some situations might come closer than others. Suffering is not doled out in equal measure, but suffering is on some level all but guaranteed, as is joy. So, shit, I mean, is any of this... Is this working? I'm trying really hard to wrap this thing up in a neat little bow, but I've never really been good at that. It just sort of, is what it is, I don't believe in soulmates. I don't think you should either. Maybe it's a fun story to tell yourself that makes you feel better about whatever choices you've made in your personal love life, but there are all kinds of people experiencing love in all kinds of ways, and I don't think we should be reinforcing the narrative that if they're not finding their one true someone, they're probably fucking up their life in some irrevocable way. I don't know. I think that's it. I think I've said what I wanted to say. I think that's the thing that I was trying to say with the video. I think that's why I was trying to make the video. So, let me know what you think, if you liked it, if you agreed, whatever. Yeah, but I think we're wrapping it up here. Okay? So patreon.com/Austin Archer if you want to support the show over there. We'd love to have you. Shout out to all the Patreon patrons. You're the best. My podcast is called People Pleaser with Austin Archer. It's every week on all the streaming places that you can listen to, and sometimes there's a video version of it here on YouTube as well. Yeah, I got music out there. If you want to listen to some of my music, you could do that. Go check out some of the movies I talked about. I don't know. Whatever. Okay, I'm done. The video's done. I'm through talking now. All right, bye.